Just very quickly, I'll go through something, which is that, like, I went to a film school. Now, when I went to that film school, I hadn't worked as an assistant to anybody. I had been my own. I mean, I'd worked as an assistant to Rajiv Mehrotra in Delhi, and the good thing with Rajiv Mehrotra was that he always gave you freedom. So you assisted him once, but you also shot your own film. So it was never like I was an assistant every day. My life was not about being an assistant. And then I went to film school. I got into film school because I had the least experience, and apparently I was the most educable because I was not groomed to be an assistant. I didn't have any particular way of looking at life. I have my own dude somehow. And somehow they saw that my photography, which is what I presented, I didn't present my documentaries, I didn't present my film work, I just present my photography. They said that this guy can tell stories through pictures. And they went like, okay, he's the youngest, second youngest. And the other guy who was the youngest was also, so two of us were equally most educable. So because we were most educable, we got taken in. And it's probably one of the best film schools in the world. And we had one of the craziest teachers you could come across. He wouldn't take class. He would say, you want to learn? Buy me a beer. Let's sit, chat, and I'll see what I can do. He never give you an answer. You have to still go and look for your answer, but you'd come up with it. But practically, when you have to practice, he would make you practice. And at the same time, if you came up short, he would screen your films in front of the whole school. All his class exercises that you did were always screened in front of the whole school. So in the end, it was, you couldn't get away from doing shit work. You had to do good work. And also, like, what he would do with us is he would make us shoot on transparency. I mean, if you're on transparency, what you expose is what it is. It's not going to change. And the moment you do that, you learn consistency in just exposing. You learn that if you don't have that consistency, because that guy is going to show it to the whole school, the moment you underexpose, overexpose, you will not be able to connect with our audience, and in the end, you're going to look like a fool. And his idea was to make you look like a fool. That was the whole deal. But on the other hand, if you performed really well and did a really great job, he would say you're a poet, and he would say fantastic. Then his agenda would be, "Ke ab is poet ko how do I, get him off his box? So how do I fuck him in front of the whole school?" So you would go through this process of where you would be a poet one day and you'd be an idiot the next in front of the whole school. But the thing was, because the pressure was on you to deliver to these guys, you had to get it right. And you were in a land of transparency which is unforgiving, So because that training is there, that diligence towards detail, it's all about the detail. Whatever work you do, you get the detail right, you'll get the broad strokes right, because you can't think about detail if you have no overview. It's not going to happen. So this is what film school actually taught us. So I always say, rather than being an assistant for a long time, go to film school. It gives you a 5-year or more shortcut to authoring your own stuff, because you're actually authoring it there. And as an assistant, you're always worried about what your boss is going to do, or are you going to rise to that expectation. So you're always dabaud in your expression, because you're serving somebody else's expression. You're not creating your own expression. In a film school, you're creating your own expression. So it's really important, even if you're an assistant, create your own expression, So it's always from the day I've been, like, even when I was in my college, I was working as a assistant to a still photographer, and within a year she was like getting me work. People couldn't afford her, they'd give me the work. And I still remember the first job, I said, I don't know if I can do it. She said, well, if you can't do it, I'm a lousy teacher. I've seen what you do, and go do it. I'll come, I'll help you. Then I went like, oh, good, she'll come and help me. 6:30 was supposed to start. 6:30, 7, she's not there. Finally at 7, I said, fuck it, I have to shoot. I got these models, I got this stuff. Shoot. Finish shooting and everything else, and she never came. But I finished the shoot. And then the next day I went to the lab and I said, here's my stuff, and process, transparency again. And he said, yeah, come at 5. Be ready, I'll give you the light table. Suddenly I got a phone call saying, Himman, come at 7. I arrive and she's sitting there with all my photographs, and looking at it, and she's separated them. Full class, full feedback session, full done. But the confidence of actually, I didn't need her to make my images, but it was nice to have her be my teacher and say, great, you can improve, feedback, whatever. And so this is how you give confidence to people, to actually explore. So in the end, I suppose part of it is that you need the confidence to explore, you need the consistency to deliver, because you have to respect the fact that after you, people are going to deal with it. So you have to respect the post. You have to respect the guy in the DI. You want to give him the best or her the best. You want to give your CG guys the best, so that everybody's work is focusing on the work they have to do, not on saving something that you didn't do right. So if I've exposed it right, for example, a double roll, like Mubarak, a lot of double roll stuff. If I get the plate right, and if I get the double roll right, and it is exposed and lit correctly, and it doesn't mean it has to match. The lighting doesn't have to match. The lighting has to feel right. Now that is the key. So then, if I get that right, I've added value, because I can shoot this person. Now, if I have two people, I can light both. Yes. Now, if I have one person and the second person is not there, I can light this person better, because I'm focusing on lighting only one person actually. So I light two people and I look at it and I go, great, thank you. And then I add value to this person's lighting, because this person is not there. So I can get a light where this person would have been a problem, or the light would have been a problem for that person. So I make this person look, feel better, story-wise, dramatically, whatever it is I want to do. This person goes away, green screen comes in or nothing, and this person comes in. Now I'm only lighting this person here. So I can make this person also feel and look better, and clearer to what I want to go. So why am I losing that opportunity to add more value in a double roll if I'm doing that, like in Mubaraka? So I change the lighting, but always keeping in mind that it has to work as a single shot. So CG has to get that. But in the end, therefore, value addition. But this is the thinking that you have to do, and it's always questioning the paradigm. Because people say lighting shouldn't change. Why shouldn't it change? It can change. But how much? That's something you have to. So you always push the envelope a little bit, move it around, see what's happening and work it. So these are the factors that come into place of bringing all departments that have to do with you into your fold and say, okay guys, let me give you stuff that's working for you. Let me be respectful to people who come before me, which is the script and all of those people. If I'm going to shoot a script, I need to respect that script. No? I need to respect what the scriptwriter written. No idea, understand it if I don't respect it. If I disrespect it, also I have to understand it to disrespect it. No? I have to know it and then add value to it. Or if it's really fantastic, at least I have to rise to that level. If my production designer is doing something for me, I need to know that that's actually really great, and then I need to lift it. If they're not, I know that I need to bring it up to a certain standard. I need to get them to come up and actually do it. If it's shit, then I need to know, okay, clear the wall. We'll just shoot against a white wall. It's better than having a shit art direction at the back. So these are decisions that you have to make. Now, what happens is, to your question, so what happens is that when I come in, Mangal Pandey, for example, I don't have that much experience under my belt. I don't have that many films under my belt to stand up to an Aamir or a Rahman or a Nitin Desai or a Kitan. For example, when I came in, Nitin was doing stuff that I was like, I only had 10 days to go for prep on that film, because Anup was meant to do it before me and then I came in to do it. But in 10 days, I did my research, I did a lot of work. So I kind of knew my subject at that level, and Nitin was doing his stuff, which is much more commercial. And I was like, you know what, it doesn't work. This is not what the textiles or the colors of that period were. These weren't the dyes that they were using to make it work, and all of that stuff. Because at the end of the day, for whatever it's worth, that's what my parents actually do. I mean, my mother's an expert in textiles, my father's like into art and all of this. So in terms of referencing, you can't have better people open the world of that period to you. I had tables of books and photographs for me to go through for, because if you're doing period, you need to know the period. So then at one point I was fighting with Nitin, and Ketan just said, you know what, he's painted you this landscape. So Nitin has given you the landscape, now you have to paint it. I'm like, okay, but the landscape needs to be right. And then somebody told me, don't fight with these guys because they're not worth it, they're just, too big. So that day I swore never again to, work with this guy, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But I said, I have to finish this film. Somehow I have to get it right. So then I would work my magic in whatever way it was. But at that point, I was still not, Kitan is an experienced director, Aamir is a dude, Nitin is a dude, Rahman is a dude, all these are dudes. And I'm just like beginning to happen, and they're not sure if this guy can pull it off. Bobby Bedi believed in me because he said he saw me, do Boom and the American Delight, and he saw what I did with what. And essentially, he believed that with a lot less, I could do a lot more, basically. So I came in, and also because of that, because internationally, we are used to working with a lot less to do more. In India, we like to be fat cats and do a lot with a lot. So I think Bobby saw that, and that's what his attraction was, and he sold me to Aamir and to Ketan and said, okay, get this guy to do it because I need to drop my budget on my cinematography part of the thing is too high. Okay, so I came in and I started working, and I would bring my aesthetic to bear in whatever way I could, but much less so because I had to work with Ketan, I had to work with Aamir, and these are all people you don't, as I learned, you paint and they give you the landscape. But I survived. Got my film up there, got noticed, whatever it was. I continued working and I continued putting runs on the board. Then you come to a Roy, for example. Now, what happens with Roy is that, like, so in the case of Ketan, he said he's given you the landscape, you paint it. In the case of Vicky, when it came to Roy, he came to me with the script, and I said, you know what, this script is not your mainstream commercial film. It's not a T-series film. So, and also, I'm not going to do this film if I can't give it the aesthetic that the script actually deserves, because it's not going to work otherwise. The images are going to not work at all. So you tell me, are you going to give me a free hand with the image making that I do? Because I have two worlds that I inhabit. One is in India, one is in Australia. I make different images in those places and here, because that's the world. It's a different world, it's a different world. But yours is somewhere in between. We need to figure it out, which we will find. So he said, you know what, I'm cool with it. As long as you're seeing the same film as I do, you go for it. So there is complete and total confidence from the director, okay, whatever we make it look like will be right between us, because we vibed on exactly what it's going to look like. We didn't see any references. He didn't talk about any other films. We just talk about the feeling and the spaces and the aesthetics of what turns him on and what doesn't turn him on and what turns me on. And that is how then we came up with Roy. And even if you're saying, like, like what happens is, like, talking about the film within a film. Now what happens is, a film within a film, instead of doing toning or making it look different and all of that, all we did was said, okay, in fiction, everybody's dream is to make 70 IMAX. That is your dream. So what is in our budget, what is the closest we can get to that dream? The closest we can get to that dream is shoot anamorphic. Chalo. So we made that anamorphic, and we made what is closer to documentary is your normal spherical 16:9. So we made the actual story spherical. That was the only difference, nothing else. But what I did was I used older lenses with dust in them, so that the feeling is different. I use sharper lenses here, so that reality is much sharper. So I gave you a sharper world here, and I gave you a softer anamorphic world here. That's it. That's all we did. But he was in agreement with me to do that. And so it was a very beautiful way of working, where he went, you know what, I've written the script. It's my first film. I need to figure it out. I'm going to film school. You guys are my teachers, two different HODs. Give me a good education, but I will direct, And we did. And by the end of it, he was making his own short breakdown. All the short breakdown, basically, initially I was doing. But by the end of it, he was, as much a part of it as anybody else. And it's very collaborative, which is a very different way of working from a Ketan Amer space. And therefore, Roy has no false notes on the whole. Mangal Pandey still has false notes, because I'm doing something, Ketan is doing something, Amer is doing something. Everybody is doing their own thing, and I am doing subtext. Those guys are doing text. In Roy, it's all subtext that we're trying to put in, but trying to keep a certain aesthetic and a certain world, and that's what that is, And same on Kalagandi, it's like Akshat's first film, and so, you guys were all talking about these 3 story different looks. I said, just get 3 different cameras, 3 different lenses. You got 3 different classes of people. One guy drives a Jag, one lot drive a Honda City, whatever it is. One lot is loaded, one lot is sort of loaded, one lot is, scrambling for money. So if you look at that car, that's a Maruti with these windows, and at that time the windows meant to be down, the rain's coming in. So I say, very simple. Give the guy who drives a Jag a camera they can afford and lenses they can afford. Give these guys a middle of the road drums, and give these guys like a very, very low budget package. So if even in camera package, so low budget package, middle budget package, high budget package. Immediately your world will change, because you're changing the lens, you're changing the camera, you're changing the lighting approach, you're changing the gripping approach, you're changing your approach to cinema, but it's the same eye. And that eye is not using a wash to change the world. I'm still showing it to you without a wash. I'm showing it to you as that camera sees it, I haven't changed that. So as a result, it works again. So again, aesthetically is different. Again, for the aesthetics, what do? You say, okay, what are my subjects? How are they seeing their world? Even in documentary, for example, if I come into somebody's house, their walls are pink and blue and red. Ugly, at one level, you'll say. At another level, I'll say, that's your walls, You allowed me into your house, thank you. How do I take your aesthetics and make my aesthetics work for me in your house, and still celebrate your aesthetics, which on my first impulse is I'm saying ugly. Let me not make it ugly. How much does it inform me about you? The moment I do that, what is ugly changes. Because at the end of the day, that's the world. Everybody has a different take. But if I can present your take in a way where it's empathetic, you're done. So it's the same for fiction. It's the same for non-fiction. It doesn't matter. Just where are you pointing it, how are you pointing it, what is the philosophy. So as you can see, each film, if you look at it, like Mangal Pandey was a space where I was going like, my God, like, what is this landscape that I've been given, I have to somehow fix this landscape. I somehow have to bring it closer to where I want to. So wherever I can do it, I'll push in all my skills. Wherever I can't do it, I'll reduce the damage. So I'm calculating. Okay, if 70% of the film can look like the way I want it to, 30%, maybe not, how much, what is the calculation here? So then you kind of go, okay, so it's working, because in the end you're going to take home that 70% more. So that's kind of like that space where you are actually, because it's also a political space, filmmaking. How do you deal with a political space? I don't deal very well, because I call a spade a spade. So Mangal Pandey, I started to learn that you have to be a little bit more careful. Whereas on Roy and Kalagandi, because I didn't have any of this stuff, I was able to give it like all, and make it happen. And in the end, your work has to be invisible. The moment my work is visible, I don't believe I've sold the world to you. But the moment you believe that world, I'm happy, So that's really where it's at. Invisibility is our, mainstay. The problem in this country is it's too easy to make films. आपने script लिख दिया, you will get funded somehow. Where I learned my craft in the latter part of my learning, before like I really came here, when I was in Australia, it was not easy to make films. Like when I went to film school, I think 7 years after I went to film school, the first person from my batch made their feature. 7 years they had to go through, all the learning and the things. So what happens is that like you're talking about The Sea or stuff like that. Like this is a guy who's a director who I helped to go to film school by shooting his portfolio, by shooting his interviews, by fighting with him that film school is a good thing to begin with. So first I met him in a party and I had a huge argument with him about film school is a good thing. And he was saying film school is a piece of shit, I should assist somebody. I said, no. Film school is a good thing, don't get me wrong, just go to film school if you want to go to film school. Strangely enough, he was making a short film, so he asked me if I shoot a short film. I said, why the hell do you want me to shoot a short film? I come from film school. He says, I thought about it and I've heard about you and you can pull this off. And it was a mad short film where, it's post apocalyptic, radiation everywhere. So like now with no money, how are you going to do that, But somehow we did, we had a lot of fun with it. That created his thing of, so that started a friendship, it started a growing up. Then he got enamored by Tarkovsky. So he got enamored by Tarkovsky, he went to film school. So I studied Tarkovsky, I talked with him about it and all of that. He made a film in there which was, influenced by Tarkovsky. Then he wanted to write a thesis on Tarkovsky and I said, okay, write a thesis. He said, no, I want to shoot a thesis. I said, like, shoot a thesis? Okay, shoot a thesis, work it out. Then as it happened, film school said, okay, shoot a thesis. And then he said, well, I need a cinematographer. So all the guys in the film school at that time he didn't want to work with. So somehow they hired me to do that thesis. So we actually did that thesis, that visual thesis of Tarkovsky, by actually, talking about sculpting in time and, space and all of those things. And we worked that. So then when we worked that. Then he came out and life is tough. So he had a baby, wife, mortgage, he gave up filmmaking. He started teaching filmmaking. A fantastic teacher. Then as it happened, he said, no, I have to go back to filmmaking. So I was in Australia, I had Chutti. So he said, I want to make a short film. I said, why? You're teaching? He said, no, I want to. I miss being on set and I want to make a film. I said, if you're coming back to filmmaking, I'll shoot it with you, no problem. So then I read his script and we talked about it and we recce'd for 10 days, found all the places. We all found out how much money he had and we put a crew together and we did it for free, the whole film. Everybody worked on it for free basically. But what we did was we fed people well and we had a good time doing it. And we brought him back to filmmaking. Now because it was his coming back to filmmaking, the stakes were really high. That film had to have a certain standard. Plus he taught so much. So he brought all that into bear. So now, and also what you're talking about is that what we had was like, there's a family. There's a family which is a filmmaking large family, So he's one of the people who's my family. Because it's hard, you hang together. And because it's hard, when you do it, you realize it's a privilege to do it, And that spirit we don't have to lose. So that spirit, when that privilege So it's a privilege to make films. So when it's a privilege to make films, you say, but yes, but I need to give it all to rise to the privilege. But equally, if it's a privilege to make films, it is my right to push the limits. Nobody can take that away from me, because in the end I'm working for nothing. So if I can't push, if I can't imbue this with as much of what I have, then why am I doing it? You know? So that is what the C is all about. It's all about a bunch of people saying, we like you, we are your filmmaking family, we will support you. But we will support you only if you allow us to have full expression. Otherwise we won't support you. And it will never happen that way. And there's a whole bunch of films that I've done with directors like this. And all of them are good friends first and director second. And that's how we make those films here. And there's a lot of films which we did that way. And each film is like, if you actually look at it, is experimenting with form in some way or the other. Some are reverse, some are, there's no people in them, some are like one shot, you know, and it's always somewhat political, somewhat a little bit pushing boundaries somewhere to make it at least worth our while to see how it works. But this is because of that, the kind of work is of a different kind. The kind of what you bring to bear and what you're allowed to do, because there are no commercial, there's no commercial rule book that is being thrown at you. It's your imagination is your rule book. Whereas when you work, say in India, in the mainstream, and you have to get your films out there, there is a commercial rule book. You have to kind of like, you know, somehow work to it, yeah. And that's how it is. And also because it's a paid job, everybody has different levels of dedication and commitment to it. Whereas an unpaid job, there's a 100% level of commitment if you do something like that. Otherwise you won't do it, no? So this culture doesn't exist here on the whole, because okay, there's a few people who do it, but if more people do it, if you have more short films, there's more training ground for people to do their things, you know. And you have to wait, you have to be patient, you know. And I think it's that which is missing, and that is also what then informs my image making, because I'm making images for this country, I'm making images for that country. So in the end, I can't make images which work in both countries. But the resonance of these images can work here, the resonance of these images can work there. So when you have a Roy or a Kala Gandhi, I'm bringing more of that here. When you have a Mangal Pandey, I'm bringing a little bit of it here, not all of it, because I can't. You know? So now also what's happened is, with a little bit more depth, I can tell a director, okay, you know, chill, you know, because I don't need to do it. I don't need to do your film. I need to live. But I want to do your film this way, as long as you're in agreement. So you can push harder because you got more. It's the same thing now. If you have more experience behind you, if you have more weight behind you, you can push harder. Each film you do adds another weight, so it adds a bit more to your push, you know, that's all it is. So in the end, Mangal Pandey I could push less, Kala Gandhi I can push a lot more, Roy I could push a lot more, that's it, you know. So basically what happens is, like, in terms of when you're actually hired to do films, one is you're hired to do mainstream Hindi films in India. Then the other option you have is the non-mainstream, what they call indie films to do and stuff like that. Sometimes you have ones that are a cross between the two. And some are films shot in India where there's a foreign director. So now I've done pretty much all of these genres, sab kar diya hai. So I've done the mainstream Hindi films, Indian director, you know, big budget films, some of them being the biggest in the year. So the demands are of a certain kind, like China to China for whatever it was the biggest budget film that year. Mangal Pandey was the biggest budget film commercially. So they need to go into the market and commercially make money. Now what happens is that, like, if your content is of a certain kind, your image making has to follow that. Like, if you have content which is slightly sophisticated, then your image making can be sophisticated. Otherwise, if you have content which is not sophisticated and it's, you know, situational comedy chalo, then you cannot sophisticate your image making that much. If it's situational comedy which is slightly crass, then your images need not be crass, but they can be simpler in terms of layering, so that the audience is not confused कि वो drama क्या है और imagery क्या है. You need to match those two. So it's very important to understand that what kind of cinema going audience is this aimed at, what is the level of sophistication required here, and this is something that we have to practice as DPs, you know. And if your image making is not in line with the level of the level of sophistication which is there, it will not ring true. The world will not ring true. So film will be a flop. Because after a point in time, people get confused. So, for example, like I just did Anis Bazmi's Mubaraka. Now, what has happened is that Anis Bazmi's Mubaraka, everybody is wondering like, how come these two guys are working together? Kaise hoga? Because Anis is known for a certain kind of visual imagery. I am known for a certain kind of visual imagery. It is comedy. That's what he's really good with, and situational comedy he's really good with. So my thing was, and everybody wondering like, okay, Himman is going to, have to bow down to Anis Bazmi to get him what he wants, flat, proscenium, etc. Now my thing is very simple, that we can work together on this. My job is to maybe change your aesthetic a little bit. Your job is to get me to see the world your way. So I think successfully he got me to see the world his way. I got to change Anis Bazmi's aesthetics a little bit, but I didn't change it dramatically so that people are not confused by ye kya ho raha hai. But I changed it enough for the images to be more sympathetic than most of his films, for the images to have more depth than most of his films. And I did that by understanding what he does. So therefore, I've never seen an Anis Bazmi film in my life until he hired me. Then I had to watch a little bit to understand what he's about. I did, and I've understood the man and I understood how he does his framing and all that, and then work it out. And then also I learned about his process. How does he actually do the process? So that's, he has a certain way of doing it. I have to go with that. So I can't dramatically change an Anis Bazmi film by going in there and saying, I'm the DP, I shoot whichever way I want. I have to do that slowly. Now, if it was overseas, what would happen is he would recognize that somebody's come in and done something else, and then we would do the next film together and the next film together and the next film together, and we'd have a body of work. Here, that may not happen because everybody wants to try somebody new, somebody ye karenge, wo karenge, because creating a body of work with a bunch of people is something that doesn't happen so much here. Either you work with people because they're in your comfort zone. They say, yes sir, 3 bags full and aage badho. So that is essentially what we like in this country, because of the fact that power corrupts. And to hold on to power, you need the people who allow you to feel secure in that power. I'm not one of those. I question, but in the West, I have directors who won't do a film because I can't do it. Because they cannot go like, that's my eyes, I need my eyes for this film. They will do another film that they don't want me to do with somebody else, that's fine. But on a particular film, they say, you know what, I'll quit the film if I can't get this guy. That is the level of dedication and the relationship that you have with the director. Because you've grown up together and you worked it out together, which is why your image making has a certain different feel, because you really are working it here. So these are the things that you have to balance. So the level of understanding of what you bring, dedication to you, and respect and personal thanks for what you bring. It doesn't need to be public. That is what the difference is overseas. Because we are not there to be in the limelight. But if I do a good job for you, I need you to tell me that. You can't take it for granted that I'll do a good job for you. You can and you should, but you shouldn't, And that is the difference between that. So that respect that actually exists for what you bring in terms of, you're not a technician. We keep calling DPs technician, we keep calling editors technicians. And everybody's a technician, but everybody's an artist, And even an artist need to know their tools. So by that, then even a painter is a technician. If you're not a technician, you can't express yourself. And if you're only a technician, then you can't express yourself. So somewhere you have to have an artist in you that is skilled at whatever tools that you use. Otherwise, how can you do it, So I think the perception in India is also that it's a technician, yaar, iske kya matlab, isko bolo, ye shot lo. Nahi, maybe not. Maybe ये जो बंदा है इसको मालूम है कि आप यहाँ से लोगे तो क्या होगा, इसको यहाँ से लो, यहाँ से लो, यहाँ से लो, यहाँ से लो. So the conception of technician, now I'm talking about editors, production designers, DPs, is changing now. They're beginning to feel that these people are also artists, and it'll get better. But that is the main difference. That we don't have a space as artists in our industry, whereas in the other part of the world, as a DP, I have a space as an artist. And that is to me the biggest difference. And don't expect it to change in a hurry, but it will change. It has to change. For me, it's like, do it if you love it, because you'll have to be doing it all your life. And in the end, like, yes, you need to make a living, balance it, but really do it if you love it. Yeah, because in the end, otherwise, and know that you have to be able to balance it to make a living also, and be realistic about it. That's all. Because if you don't love it, if it becomes a chore, if it just becomes, this is the only thing I know how to do to make a living, and you continue doing that, you'll be an unhappy person, in the end. And in the end, your work will not resonate. Your work can only resonate if you own it, if you feel that you are emotionally investing a part of yourself in the work to, put it out there, then people will respond to it, and that's how it is. So in the end, yeah, you have to really think very, very carefully before you say, I'm going to do this, and the reasons why you're doing it, So that's what it's at. It's as simple as that.